Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is we can't do what he did because we have to do what he tells us to do. Listen and obey to what he tells. Because we can't do what he did because well he was him. I don't know. It's kind of a simple answer, I guess, but we would have to hearken to what he, listen to what he says, and do as he tells us to do. Um, I kind of have a comment on what Tanya was saying a while ago.
Okay.
Um, too many people. I don't know that it's I don't know that it's actually more distorted because there was so much distortion back then. Look at Sodom and Gomorrah, and oh my goodness, look when they made the calves and all that stuff, the golden calves. I think the problem is um, that we. And I'm not real good with words, so I'm not sure how to say it, but I think the problem is because while you were talking and while she was asking, I kept hearing your comment on always saying vain imaginations. Our problem is that we take the scriptures and instead of listening to what he tells us through the scriptures, we get what we want to fit our situation out of the scriptures, and then we use that and think it's a free pass, and it's not a free pass.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not. And uh, and an answer, and you're right, but you know, man has distorted the actual truth so much now that man is so deceived. But an answer to the the question that about looking at what Yeshua doing and then do what he done, exactly what he done, we as in a fact is an impossibility for me in the flesh. I cannot do that. Why? Because he came for one purpose. Yahweh gave his laws to man. And in the beginning, they had to walk in those laws according to the flesh, or by the flesh. Man cannot do that. So, Yahweh, or Yeshua, we'll get to him, Yeshua, unveiled himself in a veil of flesh. He, of course, was born into the world. He had to do it just like other men done it. I mean, he couldn't have just been like Melchizedek. He couldn't have just come out of the wilderness and said, "Here I am," But he done it exactly he done it exactly the way man has to do it. He was born. He was raised up unto adulthood, and then he actually fulfilled the law. In other words, in his flesh, he done exactly what the law said to do. And he fulfilling that law. And that's what made him worthy of, after the sacrifice, that's what made him, I said worthy, but let's say not worthy of death. In other words, he was not worthy to continue to lay in that tomb throughout eternity, or until a Messiah did come. He wasn't worthy of that, and he wasn't worthy of that simply for the reason that he obeyed and kept Yahweh's laws. As we would say today, he kept them to the T. In other words, he done everything that you and I can't do. So he done that. But now, in order to follow him, and I don't mean that by following him exactly what he did, we do, but we hearken, as you said a while ago, we hearken unto his voice and to what he is saying, and you know, there's only a few times that he referred to following him. Once I know of was when he was choosing his disciples. You know, he instructed them to follow him. And one other time, he used the word follow was during the time of the rich, you know, the young rich man that came to him and said, you know, Master, what must I do to be saved? And of course, Yeshua went over the law with him and said, do these things, you know, and thou shalt be saved. And this proud, hypocritical young man said, well, I've done those things from my youth up. You know, I've always kept Yahweh's laws. And Yeshua said, okay, then, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, okay, then if you have, then you go and sell everything you've got and you give it to the poor and then you follow me. Well, we know what the rich young ruler done. He went away very sorrowful because he had much and many possessions in this worldly possessions. He had a lot of money, I guess we could say today. He had a lot of money and he wasn't willing to give that up, well, which proved to everybody that was around, and Yeshua made the point too, you ain't followed the law. You know, that's two times that I knew that he used the word, actual word follow him. But to follow him is to follow what he had taught the children to do. And that was to have faith. Once again, we come back to that word, faith in him, or faith in in Yahweh through him. And, you know, that would be how that he or we could be saved, was through our faith in him. And in what he did. You know, we can't do it, but we have faith in that he did it. And so that was one of the things I was considering about maybe teaching a little bit on today, but I decided against it because I haven't, the question just come up to me, or was put to me from the Holy Spirit, I think it was yesterday sometime, and so I really hadn't had time to study out some of the scriptures that I would probably want to use to illustrate the fact that we cannot look at his life and do exactly what he done. It's, you know, if we could, then there was no reason for him to do it. Because if one man, and I said this here a few Sabbaths ago, if one man out of all the human beings that has ever been born, if one man was able to keep the law completely, then there was no reason for the Messiah, because if one man can do it, then everybody should be able to do it. But not one man has ever kept it. Only if we refer to it today, the Yah-man, Yeshua. He's the only one that was able to keep that, and he's the only one that ever will keep it. And so we can't follow or do what he done and expect to make it into heaven. But we can hearken unto him, listen to what he said, and then follow what he says to do, and we can make it in. And matter of fact, if you turn to Deuteronomy, Moses himself makes the proclamation when he prophesies. He actually prophesies of the coming of Yeshua, the Messiah. In Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter. Wait a minute. No, it ain't. It ain't the 7th chapter, I'm sorry. Let me find it. It's further in, it's further, I think it's the 18th chapter, 17th or 18th chapter, 18th chapter. Here once again Moses is admonishing or telling the children of Israel here. And he's telling them, evidently here, Yahweh has revealed to him that, you know, he's not going to be able to go over and cross over into the promised land. But he's prophesying to the children of Israel here, and he's telling them that there's going to be another one come. And the word here in the King James Version uses that there's going to be another prophet come. And it's the 18th chapter. Now he's warning them to begin with out of there, don't do when you get over into the land that Yahweh has promised you. Don't do what the owners of the land now does, because they were, they were observers of times and diviners and witches and, another word starts with an N, necromancer or necromancer, which is also I looked it up the other day. I can't remember.
They deal with dead. They deal with dead.
Yeah.
Necromancers.
Yeah, yeah, they deal with the dead. Yeah, or dead. But anyway, don't don't do what they done. But now he's making a prophecy unto them. In the 15th verse of the 18th chapter says, Yahweh thy Elohim will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me, like unto Moses. And it says, unto him ye shall hearken. And I know most of you that's here, or most of you that's here knows I've taught on that word hearken, and the word that they the Hebrew word there is Shema, without the H, but it's Shema, without the H on the end, I'm sorry. It's Shema, which is to listen, but not only listen, but to obey him. Not only listen to what he says, but be obedient to what he said. And that's what the word hearken, or the Hebrew word Shema, means. Unto him you shall hearken, according to all that thou desirest of Yahweh thy Elohim in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. And Yahweh said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. They would, Yahweh, they asked not to ever see it again, not to ever, because they feared, and they, if they ever see that again, that they die. And you can read that over in Exodus about that. And anyway, Yahweh said he would never do that again, but he did promise a prophet that would come. And it says, the 18th verse, once again, rehearses the 15th verse, says, I will raise them up a prophet among their brethren, like unto thee, like unto Moses, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And the 19th verse is really one that seals everything, I guess, is, and it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which ye shall speak in my name, which he shall speak in my name, let me say it right, I will require it to him, or of him. I will require it of him. In other words, if we don't hearken unto what Yeshua says and do what he says, then Yahweh is going to require it of that person. In other words, that person is going to be punished. And you take it from there on down. He's talking about if false prophets come, and speak anything else, then don't believe him. Well, how do you know if he's a false prophet? Well, if he prophesies and it don't come true, then you know Yahweh didn't say it. So, but that's the rest of that. But to just further enhance the idea that we are to listen to Yahweh, and that no longer would it be Moses, no longer would it be Eliyahu or Elijah, but it would be Yeshua that was speaking. And I find that in Matthew. Well, every one of you know where I'm talking about, or you will when I read it, referring to that we listen to him. Let me find it real quick here in Matthew. It's Matthew the 17th chapter. Here, and it says, "And after 6 days Yeshua taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up unto a high mountain apart," separate from everybody else, "and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Eliyahu talking with him," with Yeshua. "Then answered Peter and said unto Yeshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Eliyahu." Oh, it's good that we've seen all of this. Now, they all looked unto Moses. They all respected Eliyahu, Elijah, as a mighty prophet of Yahweh. And they always looked up. But now, Peter is saying, hey, let's make 3 tabernacles here. In other words, let's make these 2 equal with Yeshua. Let's make 3 tabernacles. One for Moses, one for Eliyahu, and one for Yeshua. Let's make all 3, making all 3 of them more or less equal to one another. But Yahweh spoke out. And it says, while he yet spake, the 5th verse says, while he yet spake, while Peter was yet saying all of this, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And of course, this was quoted from Greek and Latin, but if it was written, which Matthew was written, we know that there's a copy of Hebrew Matthew, but if we look at that word there, in whom I am well pleased, Shema, or they could have used the word hearken ye him. Listen and obey him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face and were sore afraid. And Yeshua came and touched them and said, Arise and be not afraid. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no man save Yeshua only. Now, people can lift up Moses as much as they want to, and I know how great a man Moses was. I don't take anything away from what he did and how he followed Yeshua and what it meant for him to follow and to lead the children of Israel. I take none of that away from him, but let me tell you something. He's not as great as Yeshua. And what he said and what Yeshua said, of course, Moses spoke of Yeshua. And we read that in just there one time. We read that in Deuteronomy, 18th chapter. We read that where he spoke of one coming after him. Hear him. Moses himself said it. There's one greater than I coming. Hear him. And here Yahweh himself spoke it. This is my son, in whom I'm well pleased. Hear ye him. Hearken, Shema, unto him. Listen to him. Don't try to follow him exactly the way he walked. You can't do it. But if you'll listen to what he's saying and obey his commandments, we're able to do it through him and through faith in him. We're able to do it, but not by our own. And not by looking at what he done and say, I'm going to do the same thing. You're going to fail. You're not going to do it. You're failing. Well, you fail the moment you say that or the moment you think that. Because you cannot and you will not do exactly what he done. There's no way you can do it. If there was, he wouldn't have had to come and done it. And to me, when people, I know they're deceived and I know they're reasoning things out and looking at things and saying, well, yeah, that's how we follow him. Is we just look at his life and then we do exactly what he done. There is absolutely no way we can do that. But if we will listen to him, hearken to what he says, and obey that, and he himself promises us that spirit that we've been trying to teach and talk about here the last 6 or 8 weeks, that spirit, if we will if we put faith in him and he puts that spirit within us, that is the only way that we can fulfill righteousness, is through that. He did it on his own, but we can't. We have to have him. And there's a lot of things, people, that Yeshua has to discern and reveal. You know, I've said it many times. I can only present it. It takes Yeshua to reveal it. And there's a lot of things that people are getting in their minds, and as Teresa said a while ago, reading the scriptures and then, you know, conjuring up in their own minds, following their own imaginations, and saying, well, this is what he meant by this, and then jumping behind a pulpit and teaching that. And I know I followed some of that myself through this deception, and I know from experience that that's what happens. And but now, thank Yeshua, now he has revealed himself unto me, and I know the difference. And I know that the new covenant is different from the old covenant. I also know that there can't be two covenants side by side representing the same thing, or at least one of them being a shadow picture and the other one being the real thing. There can't be both of them still in effect. One of them has to be disannulled. And of course Hebrews explains very clearly that that one was waxed old and was made void, or done away with, or he even uses the word, the commandment was disannulled. In other words, what he that covenant, that law, was disannulled in order for the new law, which is through faith in the Spirit of Yeshua, and that Spirit become our high priest to lead us and guide us. There can't be a priesthood of a Levitical priesthood and a priesthood, a high priesthood of Yeshua after the order of Melchizedek. Both of them running side by side, and one person over here doing this one and one person over here doing this one, and both of them okay. If they was both okay, then there wouldn't have been no need for him. They would, okay. There has to be one. That's all there is one. And we have to understand that. Somebody was going to start to say something there.
Brother George,
Yes, ma'am, sir.
thinking about we're doing like Yeshua,
Uh-huh.
John, the 14th chapter, 11 plus verse says, "Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very work's sake.
Uh-huh.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, that he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also. And greater works than these shall you do, because I go to the Father." But the Father is we have the Holy Ghost to lead us to do the things that he did.
Exactly. So, in other words, we can't do them ourselves, can we? We have to have that Spirit leading us to do them.
But he said we could do it.
Yeah, but through that Spirit.
Right.
So we can't do it on our own. And I can't look at his life and say, this is what I'm going to do, on my own. I have to realize I have to have that Spirit that he said he would send back, in which 14th chapter there, John, you talking to him, begins to make that promise, that he will send that Spirit, and it will lead us and guide us into all righteousness. Through that Spirit, we do it, but not on our own, And I think that's where a lot of people are so confused, I can't look at him and say, I'm going to do that myself, but I can look at him and say, through you, Yeshua, I can do this, And that's what I've been trying to get through all these last few weeks, is the Spirit is what accomplishes the fulfilling of the law or the righteousness in you and I. It's not I ourselves, but it's that Spirit that Yeshua puts in us that accomplishes that in us. Yeshua said himself, I think I read it, it's either in Galatians or Romans, but I think it's Galatians, where that Paul writes that, that Yeshua is the end of the law for righteousness. We can't do it. We can't obey the law for righteousness, but we can do it through him, and the righteousness is fulfilled through him. So he's the end of the law, and that simply means he's the end of the law as far as us trying to keep it on ourselves or by ourselves, according to righteous or for righteousness. That we now attain that righteousness through obedience and his Spirit that walks in us, or walks in us and causes us to do that thing.
Talking about the covenants.
Where did Tanya go?
Go ahead, Dean.
Try to bring her back.
Not only just believe in him, but we believe on him.
There she is, right at the very bottom of those. It's in.
Okay.
We also can do ask anything in his name, and he'll do it.
Right. Now through the, through that Spirit, now we can do it, But I've tried to make the emphasis on it. We can't do it on our own,
Talking about the covenants, it seems pretty simple that, I understand why people don't get it, but you can't, if you make a promise to me, and then you break that promise, don't come back and tell me that you're going to keep trying to fulfill that promise. Because if you couldn't keep that promise, don't try to keep it again. You have to promise me a new promise. And that's what he did with the covenants, you can't renew something. You can't start over. You have to, you can't try to continue with what you've done once it's broken. You have to you have to get a new one, and that's what he did with the Correct?
Well, yeah, in a sense of what you're saying there. Of course, man is the one that broke it. Yahweh or Yeshua never did break it, but man broke it,
Yeah.
you know. And that is very evident in the 36th chapter of Jeremiah. That's where it's spoken the plainest anyway, is there in Jeremiah the 36th chapter. Now it's spoken in Ezekiel and it's spoken in Isaiah and some of the other prophets, but Jeremiah really says it the plainest when he says there in Jeremiah 36, he says, the day cometh, says Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, not like the covenant I made with their fathers and Horeb, which they break. See, it's not going to be like the covenant that he made with their fathers, because their fathers broke that covenant. And you or I, either one couldn't do it either. But so he said, but I will do this. I will place them, place my laws, my commandments, my laws, the tablets that was written on the stones and placed into the ark under the mercy seat. Those will no longer be placed there, but they will be written upon the hearts and on the minds of man that they do these things. And the only way they are written that way is through the Spirit of Yeshua that is in us, and through his death. Huh?
And it took his death.
And it took his death, yeah, to do that. And that's another way to look at it. I'm making a new one, not like the one I made with your fathers, because they broke that, but I'll make a new one. I will take those laws and those commandments that I gave to them, and I wrote them on tablets of stone. I will take those laws and those commandments, and I'll put them in your heart and in your mind to do them. So there's always a difference, and I didn't really mean to get into so much the covenants today, but I was bringing in, or I was being susceptible to ever have something come out, or questions or statements that was being made, and so I was making, and that's how it come forth, or how it come away. But I don't know. Anybody else have anything on that or on those?
I do have another question though, once you're done with this. Oh, are you
Go ahead.
finished with this?
Yeah.
If you have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, earlier when I said I wasn't really sure what to ask, I forget that once this session is over, we spend lots of time asking questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question that I asked last week after the thing. You had spoke last week, and for those people who watched it, they'll know that you had made emphasis on how they, a lot of the people stress the law so much. And so I had asked you about them being, why did you stress that? Why you had stressed that so much, and why it was so important that you pointed that out. And so maybe for the people who watched last week, they might, you know what I'm saying, it might help too. Because it helped me a lot when you explained it to me afterwards.
Okay.
Because my question actually that I said was, they're not interchangeable, the covenant and the law, are they? And then that's why when you explained why you didn't like the fact that they used the word the law so much and how they used it.
Well, yeah, and the way I probably can't use the same words that I used then, but maybe I can give you the same idea. Was that they clump everything together. When you say law today, when you say law, everybody automatically thinks about the Ten Commandments, and then they think and bring into all of that together. They bring in all of the temple worship, the Levitical priesthood, everything, and they clump it together and make it all one thing. Well, if that be the truth, and I don't know if I said it this way last week or not, but if that be the truth, then Yeshua done away with the commandments. You know, if the law could be clumped into one thing, you know, because he did disannul and he did make void the Levitical priesthood. And that's, Tanya, that's something I've been was trying to bring out earlier about the, you know, sacrifices and things that you talked about. They're the ones that made the sacrifices here on earth, and that was the priesthood that, as long as it was in effect, that man had to go by or observe by, was it. And, you know, they, and I've made this statement before too, and this is a long answer to you, Teresa, but anyway, they make this, you know, I've made this statement before, that they could not, and I'm talking about anybody of the children of Israel, it didn't make any difference, or anybody else, the stranger that sojourned with them, or anybody else, could not just go to Yahweh and say, Yahweh, I want this, or Yahweh, I need this, Yahweh, do this for me, or they couldn't even go before Yahweh and say, Yahweh, I want to thank you for what a wonderful day I had today. They had to go through that priest, the priesthood. If they wanted to thank Yahweh for a blessing, they had to make the sacrifice of not only the animal sacrifice, but the food and drink sacrifice for that particular blessing that they were thanking Yahweh for, and then they had to bring it to the priest, and the priest had to be the one that offered it to Yahweh. And that was the priesthood back then. They was the, if you want to say it, they was the mediator between Yahweh and man at that time. The priests were, and especially Moses and Aaron, which was at that time when it was first given, was the Aaron was the high priest, and all other high priests came through him, through his line. But anyway, they had to go through him. They were the only ones, and the high priest was the only one that could go into holiest of holies. And he could only do it once a year before Yahweh and present the sacrifice and sprinkle the blood on the mercy seat, and, you know, for the forgiveness of the sins of the children of Israel. But he also had to first make his own atonement. The high priest had to make his own atonement. Because why? He was human. He could not obey the law himself through the flesh. But he had to make an atonement for his own sins and then offer the atonement for the children of Israel. That was the priesthood. That was the way that you contacted, or that was your contact for Yahweh. Today, that priesthood has been voided, and now a high priest by the name of Yeshua now, who is now our high priest. And now he is the way that we come unto Yahweh and make our petitions or our desires or needs presented to Yahweh. We do it through our priest, Yeshua, a Messiah. And that is the only way, ladies and gentlemen, and I know I see it all the time, and I'm hoping they're not as deceived or mixed up as it looks like they are when I see posts all the time, Abba Father do this, Abba Father do that, I see Abba Father or Father or Hashem or other names, but I see them seemingly going directly to Yahweh, the Father. But ladies and gentlemen, that's still not possible. We still have a high priest that we have to go through, and that high priest now is not of an earthly priesthood, but he's of a heavenly priesthood. Maybe I better do a study on Hebrews. But he is our high priest now, and he's the one that has to make our petitions known unto Yahweh. That flesh, that sacrifice that was made now is our mediator between the Father and man, is the one, Yeshua, the Messiah. He's the one. And he's the only way we can come to the throne of grace. We can come boldly to that throne now, but we have to do it through Yeshua, the Messiah. And but anyway, getting back to the word law, they clumped all of it together. So even I don't know if the Christians has the understanding that they're actually saying or not when they say he done away with, because they clump it all together just like everybody else wants to clump it all together and say the law. But he didn't do away with his laws of his commandments. That marriage vow that he gave to the children of Israel there on Mount Sinai, he did not disannul that or do away with it. But he did present it in a way now that we are able to fulfill it, but it's through him. And so I don't like to clump law and priesthood or tabernacle worship and everything else that had to be done through the Levitical priesthood and through the tabernacle worship that they had to go through at that time. I don't like to clump it all together because there is a separation. There is a distinction there because he voided this, the priesthood, the temple worship that they had to do at that time. He voided that. But now, but he didn't void the marriage vow or the commandments that he gave the children of Israel. But he did now has them presented in such a way that we are now able to fulfill them, but still not without a high priest. We still have to have him as our high priest, and we fulfill them through him. Now, I don't know if I said it the same. I know I didn't say it the same way as I did last week, but yeah, I give that example of the law, and I give that examination or that definition. When we all say the law, we look at everything, and if we look at everything, then we have to do it and obey, and we are to obey the law today. Then we have to do everything they done, including their temple worship. But he is now our high priest. He is now, and we are his temple, and we are, the temple of the high priest. We now work, or he works through us, though, to fulfill all the righteousness of his laws, or his commandments, his marriage vows to man. That's how
I may not say this right, so I'll let you fix it. But he is the last sacrifice. That's why we don't do that. We don't have to, because he was the last sacrificial lamb.
Well, exactly, and that's why I'm going back when Tanya asked the question about where it's talking about the sacrifices there in Zechariah. I'll get it out here in a minute, but where he made that he made those. Now, whether there's I'm misunderstanding that. I don't think so. I feel like Yeshua has showed that to me. That those, even though they may be making some kind of animal sacrifice during that time, if they are, then it's not going to be an acceptable thing to Yahweh, because Yeshua is the last and final sacrifice that will ever have to be made for sin. Are they referring to, well, even, and I can't even agree with that, are they referring to, sacrifices of blessings or of thanksgiving or, of whatever, because he is every one of those sacrifices. And we make the sacrifice of thanksgiving or blessings unto him, we make it through presenting this body, the living sacrifice that we're supposed to present it to him as. Letting him, in the Spirit, letting him involve or envelop in us, and then we yield this body a sacrifice to him, for him to work his will in it and through it. And that's our sacrifice that we're to offer to him now, and to offer it as a holy sacrifice. And it's not something above and beyond the call of duty. It's something that is reasonable, and and the Scripture says that which is our reasonable sacrifice. It's not something grand. It's just something that we ought to do because of our love for him and our love for what he done for us, was to allow his Spirit into our temples and let him work with this and present it. Now,
I may not have the right scripture, but wasn't it in Isaiah 1, maybe 13 or 16? I'm looking up with my glasses. That you were talking about, where he actually was saying that he no longer wanted their sacrifices and their burnt offerings and stuff. And it's through our vain imaginations that we give these things, because we think we're doing something for him without him asking, when he's saying he no longer wants them. I believe that is in Isaiah 1, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, Isaiah 1, he asked the people, to what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me? Saith Yahweh, I am full of your burnt offerings of lambs and the fat of fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks or of lambs or of he-goats. When you come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand, to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me, and the new moons and the Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with it. It is iniquity, even the solemn meetings. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. And if you'll notice there, I read on through the 14th verse there, to make a point there that he says, your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. What they have done and what they had done is, through their own vain imaginations and through their traditions and through their rituals, they had turned the feasts of Yahweh, and they had determined to do things, their way. What does it say in Jeremiah when the Scriptures requested, if you'll hearken unto me? And the children of Israel said, but we will not. But we'll go ahead and do it our way. Well, that's what Isaiah is talking about here. We will not. We have done it. We've made our own ways of observing your feast and your holidays and your holy days and your new moons and your solemn feasts and your solemn assemblies. We've made it a way to do it. We're doing it our way, so he's telling them now, away with your ways. I will no longer accept them. And ladies and gentlemen, they were doing it plumb up to the time of Yeshua. They were doing it plumb up to the time Yeshua stepped out of that temple and his disciples tried to show him the temple, and he looked at them and said, "Let me tell you something. There's coming a day there ain't going to be one stone left upon another." And he's talking about that temple. And they done it up until about the 70 A.D. when the king, I keep his, I know which one it is. I know who it is, but I can't think of Titus. Come through, attacked Israel, and tore the temple down. And there's not been one since, except our own temples, individual temples of him. And but anyway, that's where he was talking about. When we make his way our way, and the Christians have done just as bad as Israel did. They have in their own hearts and in their own imaginations, they have said, well, we'll do it this way. You know, well, Yahweh, Yeshua will accept this, you know. We'll make a great day here. We'll make him, we'll declare a birthday for him, and we'll celebrate that birthday, and he will bless us for it. You know, and we're blessing him, he'll bless us for it. When all the time they doing an abomination unto him. But they don't realize it, but they're doing it their way, not his way. And that's what they were doing here in Isaiah, and all the way up, they were doing it their way and not his way. And finally he told them, said, "I'll away with it, I don't want it anymore." And
the scary thing is, Brother George, that we're doing it even now. We're doing the exact same thing that his people did back then, that when they said, no, we're going to do it our way. Well, you know, that's what we do. People who know, the really scary thing is the people who know, they know that Saturday is the Sabbath. They know these things. They know what he says, but yet they accept that Constantine has changed it and Sunday is the day of worship, and they accept that they have put his birthday in December, and so we're doing the same thing that they did to him. It's like, well, yeah, we know the truth, but we're going to do it our way anyway. And they accept those things. And that's the really scary thing, is those people who know and then still go ahead and do it their own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something I always try, and well, like I've told y'all before, that is my main ministry, you know, is to let people know that we're not to follow the imaginations of our own hearts or the imagination of other men's hearts, but we're to follow this and what it teaches us. And anytime we deviate from that, then Yahweh, Yeshua, is very displeased with us. And even though, you know, he don't do it like now, you know, back under the laws of Moses gave, you know, if a person was caught in the act of adultery, let's use that one for example, they were taken out and immediately, or you know, as soon as they had the trial or whatever you want to call it, they took them out and stoned them to death. They were killed right then. But now, Scripture teaches us now that Yeshua said, "Vengeance is mine, saith Yahweh." We're not to take them out and destroy them or kill them now. But that don't mean they're getting away with it because they're doing it and hollering, "I'm saved," and you know, by grace I'm saved and I don't have to obey the laws and things, and they're doing these things and not being punished for it right now doesn't mean that they're getting away with it. "Vengeance is mine, saith Yahweh, I will repay." When they stand before him on that great day, then is when they're going to receive their payment for those sins, is when they stand there And he says, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, for I don't know you. Even though many of them's going to say, well, didn't I do great things for you? You know, he's going to say it. And just because it ain't being done immediately, you know, we catch somebody in adultery, well, we don't go out and stone them right now and kill them. The law still works. It will eventually, they will pay for that sin. Unless they put it under the blood of Yeshua. But they can't keep doing it and keep putting it under the blood of Yeshua. We'll not get into that. I know we've been into that before. So, but not today anyway. We done went too far to try to explain all that. You can't keep doing it, but regardless, you can't keep doing it hollering, I'm saved and I'm under the blood, my sins are under the blood of Yeshua. You can't, it don't work that way, and one of these days people are going to find that out, that it don't work that way. Anybody else have anything else? If not, we'll close this part out and then we can just argue amongst ourselves, I guess. No. Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you.